So there are different components to application for PGWP, such as when to apply, what is the right way, who are eligible, what is PGWP in the first place. So the PGWP allows international graduates to work in Canada after completing their studies. And to be eligible for PGWP, there are certain requirements. So a candidate must meet so for example, they should complete an eligible program of study, and the program must be a minimum of 8 months long and have been completed at a DLI in Canada. And there is actually a list on Canada.ca, which is a resource for many different things, where everyone can check which institutions are PGWP eligible and which are not. And they have to obtain a degree, diploma, or certificate. So the candidate must have completed and graduated from their program of study, meaning they obviously have to graduate at the end of their studies. And a good tip here is that the students should not give unscheduled breaks in between their studies and should be a full-time student at all times. And some flexibility may be given if it is the student's final semester, but again, it will be at the discretion of the officer at the end. So we always recommend students to try to have like 2 semesters of education, 1 semester summer break, 2 semester education, 1 semester summer break, and each semester they should take minimum. Generally, schools' full-time course load is 3 courses per semester, so they should generally stay above this course load. Students should obviously have a valid study permit, both during studying and also when applying for the PGWP, the postgrad work permit. And the candidate must have had a valid study permit throughout the duration of their studies, basically. Apply within 180 days of completing the program. Students must apply for a PGWP within 180 days of receiving their final marks and being notified that they have completed their program. And the length of the PGWP is determined by the length of the student's program of study. If the program of study is less than 8 months, so basically it is considered as a 1-year program, then the candidate will not be eligible. Sorry, if it's less than 8 months, then candidate won't be eligible. So such as like 6-month certificates or some English programs, they won't be eligible. And if the program of study is between 8 months and 2 years, then the candidate will be eligible for a PGWP generally equal to the length of their program of study. Mostly it's like a 1-year program, can receive up to 1 year of postgrad work permit. And if the program of study is 2 years or more, then the applicant will be eligible for PGWP for up to 3 years. And this generally is given for the whole 3 years. And it's important to note that the PGWP is a one-time opportunity and candidates must apply for it within the 180-day window mentioned before. And failing to apply within this time frame can make a student ineligible for the PGWP afterwards. So the best time to apply would be after receiving the final mark or the notice of graduation and before the study permit expiration date. This way, maintained status is in effect, where applicants can start or continue working as if their work permit is approved. And if in the end their permits are approved, they must apply for a new SIN number. This is important, and share the new SIN together with their permits with their employer. And if the permit is refused, hopefully won't, then they must stop working and take the next appropriate course of action. And if the student applies for the PGWP within the 180 days, but after the expiration of their current study permit, this happens a lot. So then they must apply to restore their status as a student at the same time of the PGWP application, which has an additional fee. But more importantly, unfortunately, students are not allowed to work until their permits are approved. So maintained status is not in effect in that case. And a common misunderstanding with this PGWP is the continuation of work after school is terminated, even if the study permit is still valid. So for example, if the school finished on May 2023, but their work permit is given until July 2023, some students think that they can still continue working just because their study permits are valid. So a student must cease working after their final grades are posted. And at this point, they should apply for the PGWP as soon as possible. And if done correctly, then they can continue working after the PGWP application. And finally, just to give you an idea on how long does the application take, recently the application has been taking around 5.5 months for it to be concluded. And this is actually good news. Because the length of the PGWP generally starts at the time of approval. So basically, you might have an additional 5.5 months of work experience. But at the same time, if the client wishes to travel during this time, then if they exit and re-enter, they may lose their maintained status. And two, if they don't already have the TRV, then they must wait for their work permit application to be approved to apply for the TRV afterwards. And this is a problem for many students, actually. And I mean, there are many more details when it comes to Canadian immigration, especially PGWP application, but I'd say these are the basics that everyone should know. After the PGWP is submitted, as long as their study permit was valid at the time of the application, they can continue working. And some students say, oh, I cannot get a new SIN number, or my employer says, because there's a lot of confusion on this topic, my employer says I need a valid work permit. And we always send them a screenshot from Canada.ca saying and explaining the idea of the maintained status. And even if your SIN number is expired, because SIN number is given to a permit, it might be given to a study permit, it might be given to a work permit. Even if it expires, it's okay. You can have your old SIN number, you can have your old permit, and you can have proof that you applied for your work permit. That should be enough. But that's why I mentioned that as soon as you receive your new work permit, you should apply for the new SIN number because your old one is expired. And within like 3 days or within a week, you have to submit it to your employer. If a person is not already working at a company and they're not planning to do so immediately after they graduate, then it doesn't sound like a big deal. Sure, they can graduate because they still have valid study permit. They cannot work with that, but at least they can stay in Canada. And they didn't do the 180 days yet, so they are not in a rush. But if a student has a job lined up or already working at a co-op where they are continuing to work after graduation, then they must, stopping for 1 week, 2 weeks. Some companies don't prefer this, and students also don't prefer this.